Or every action, every concept, each of the words that we're going to use, all of the concepts that we enunciate, all of the events that we organize has an ethical component associated with it. Consequently, some of these intellectual concepts and some of these deeds that we transform it on the landscape also have an ethical dimension, and environment is one of them. Any type of an action of human being towards their environment has two connotations. One of them is going to be a very logical connotation, and the other is going to be ethical. Now, logical can be ethical, but ethical is always going to be human. Ethical is always going to be something that is sustainable. And it is this type of an ethical connotation which has been talked about in some of the societies, in some of these dharma, not in religion. For example, in Sanatan, this has been extensively talked about, where you can imagine that Hindus happen to worship no less than 3.2 billion gods. The concept is not that they are all gods. That is, for them, a plant is a god, different type of plants are gods, all the biodiversity is a god, a frog is a god, a dog is also a god, and you can imagine the snakes are also, trees are also, flowers are also everywhere. What they're going to say? Kan kan mein Bhagwan rehte hain. So that speaks about the environmental ethics that the people used to profess, used to follow. It's a different matter that they don't want to follow it right now. Under the onslaught of being liberal, under the onslaught of being so-called educated, under the onslaught of being Westerner, under the onslaught of being modern, under the onslaught of being uneducated, unethical as well. Now, the basic plank of environmental ethics is associated with how is it that we're going to perceive things. Now, we see things as we perceive them. That's the way our actions indicate how we perceive things. How is it that we have perceived even nature? Our behavior with our natural environment clearly depicts our perception. That is, whether we go on to understand the environment as an object, or whether we go on to understand our whole of the environment as a god, or whether we go on to observe our entire of the environment as a guiding force, or is it that we understand that environment is our friend, philosopher, or guide? That is the first fundamental of environmental ethics. Now, in this connection, the important part is calling any natural phenomena as a natural disaster or an environmental problem is what is today's tragedy. Tragedy because calling any natural phenomena as an environmental disaster or as a natural disaster or an environmental problem as if it is a misfit in our natural world. How it can be? How is it that you can go on to be a judge of whatever that is happening in nature and in natural conditions? How is it so? Just imagine, Earth was formed somewhere roughly 4.6 billion years ago, while life in its simplest form began about 3.8 billion years ago, 3.6 billion years ago, of which human beings began their journey merely about 2 million years ago. Human beings have hardly got any space on the earth. Now that means that when we are going to be talking about it, the earth came much before the human beings came. And thus, the right to reject human beings rested with the earth and not on the human beings who can have the right to judge any natural phenomena, whether it suits them or not, or they can go to reject it. That is, the right to judge any natural phenomena doesn't rest on the human being because they are the one who have been at the mercy of the environment. Now, it's a different manner, that is, the human beings do not go on to follow them. Thus, calling a natural phenomena such as something like a volcanic eruption as an environmental hazard or a problem is no less than a misnomer. Why? Because these natural phenomena used to be taking place even before, and they're going to be taking place now as well. Now that means it depicts our perceptual distortion as much as it depicts our ethical and moral values as well. This is what it goes on to depict right now. That means we always go on to lower our ethical values. We always go on to show a low degree of a value loaded perceptual aspect whenever we go on to judge this type of an environmental condition and call it. That's why we say that it's going to be a misnomer. Now imagine there are going to be, that is the whole of this environment is going to be perceived by different type of human being in different ways. For example, one of this perception is going to be that environment is going to be fragile. Nature is fragile. And due to some of the agricultural practices which have made it irreversible. And why is it that we're going to say it has made it irreversible? That has made it irreversible largely because we cannot go to reclaim the same nature as it used to be existing some time back. So environmental changes that had taken place, it's not that they can be reversed easily. However, in reality, environment will keep on changing. It changes and it keep on changing because it has an evolutionary aspect to it. That is, the change is gradual and the change is evolutionary. Only when human interference speeds up the gradual process of change that the ecosystem becomes vulnerable. Only human beings, no one else. And because we go on to make them vulnerable, that's why we are the only one who happen to call it as fragile. No one else goes on to call it fragile. Imagine Earth has existed since 4.6 billion years. How can it be fragile? But because we are one who are able to engineer a lot of things in the environment, that's the reason that we're going to be calling it as a fragile. Other than that, environment is also going to be called by the name benign. Benign because when it provides services as we desire, and also otherwise when people change ecosystem in such a manner and to such an extent that the ecosystem is not able to function properly as much as it was able to function before. So it's benign. That means this is how the nature goes on to behave. This is the function. This is the way in which the nature actually goes on to work. Now, the basic reason why is it that we have developed such type of a faulty perception? Is it associated with the words that we go on to use? Now, words associated with environment are not only words because they're going to carry an entire array of perceptions, opinions, some type of feeling of a community, some type of attachment which people have transformed it in the form of words and whatnot. For example, when you go on to be using the word God for environment, that goes on to show that how much amount of a respect you have. For example, sometime back in India, when people used to cultivate certain type of crops, can you imagine some amount of floor they used to keep it for ants. Some amount of floor they used to keep it for fishes in the field. Some amount of floor they used to give it to some people. A good amount of floor that is extract of the agricultural product, they used to be feeding it for a variety of other type of communities as well. Now, when you go on to grow up in such type of an environmental condition, in such type of a societal condition, you tend to use certain type of words. You start worshipping some of those things that normally people do not go on to get associated with them. Now, things like, why is it that some of these things like Nag Panchami takes place? Because snakes are now considered to be an important component of ecosystem. Imagine if there wouldn't have been any type of a dhamin snake in the environment at all, that is gold pachada as you're going to be calling it in Uttar Pradesh, there was no way that you would have practiced paddy cultivation and paddy farming in the fields of Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. This is largely because these are the snakes that go to feed on the rodents. And without these snakes, the rodent population would have erupted of sorts and erupted in a huge manner. So, when we go to say, that is the use of the word problem with the environment. that is the use of the word problem with the environment itself has not been ethical at all, because the word environmental problem treats the nature as if mankind has to find a solution to some problem, to some elements that affects the nature. That is not so. Nature itself is going to be complete. But then when you going to use the word problem associated with the environment, it speaks of the mindset. It speaks of the fact that you have become so arrogant. It speaks of the fact that you are perverted. It speaks of the fact that you have lost your senses. How is it that natural events can be a problem? Natural events are events. They are not a problem. They are a phenomena. They are not a problem. That is, an earthquake comes, it's a natural event. Without that type of an earthquake, there was no way that Himalayas would have evolved. Without thousands and 10,000 millions of floods, there was no way that the entire of the Gangetic plain would have evolved. Without, again, some millions of tsunamis, there was no way that India's coastal area would have evolved at all. So the word environmental problem, therefore, points to certain type of perceptual distortion that the human beings are associated with, or their psyche is associated with. But that is not all. There is another word, that is another case in point is the use of the word hazard. Now, doubling any event as hazard absolves people of the responsibility to perceive as a problem, removes respect and awe associated with the nature, and degrades it in the eye of the perceiver. Also allows people to become even more judgmental. This is complete objectification of the environment. That is, if it suits you, you say that, well, the weather is nice. If it doesn't suit you, you start calling it as a hazard, as if you are the supreme judge of the environment and that environment is your slave, or that you have bought the environment and you are objectifying the whole of the environment. What are the consequences of such type of perception? Of course, we're going to carry this perception and there are some consequences associated with it. All of these perceptual distortions, we are going to be talking about all the type of perceptual distortions, mainly cause the objectification of the environment. It is the difficulty in identification of a problem because we are not able to identify the problem. That's why we give it a name. It's that if we are not able to understand a person, we give it a name. We become judgmental towards it. It causes us to look at the environment from an anthropogenic perspective rather than from a natural perspective and develop a judgmental attitude towards it. And then that is how we start judging it, all of these type of perceptual distortions. So that is what exactly causes us to judge the whole of the environment in this case. Anthropogenic perspective basically means a perception of the nature. We are talking about that aspect, perception of the nature. And that is going to be either as benefiting or as humans or the mankind. Basically, in that manner, basically we are going to be talking about that is all the phenomena that are going to be looked into. Whenever you're going to judge it, you are trying to derive some benefit out of it, or maybe you are trying to harm some of these people. Now, for this phenomena is being looked upon as a problem and presented as in a practical and a selfish manner. When we say going to say selfish manner, that means it is completely centered towards you. Now that means when you are centered towards you, you're going to completely preclude some of the creatures like that of you can take fishes, like that of trees, like that of monkeys, like that of rodents, like that of anyone in this case. Environment is considered to be friendly, if it benefits you, or if it doesn't go to benefit you, it's considered to be hazardous. If that is going to be the value, then God bless the human beings. So, while a judgmental attitude towards nature prevents people from learning from nature, now you start judging anyone, you stop learning. That means when you are going to be judging, let's say, a tree, this tree shouldn't have been there, then you don't go to consider the benefits of the tree. Then you go to build a mall and you say that this snake shouldn't have been there. Then you don't know what exactly was the action of the snake in that place, what exactly the snake was doing in that region. So while judgmental attitude towards nature prevents people from learning nature and prevents the shaping of a learner's attitude, that means a learner's attitude is human in the sense that human beings are born to learn from everything and anything possible. So being judgmental means nature can be blamed, nature can be assessed. That means you are the one who will going to assess nature, whether nature has been benefiting you or not. Nature can be evaluated, whether it will go on to bring benefits to you or not, and whether it is going to be good for you or not. Nature can be looked down upon because you don't want to like that nature. We can go to look down upon. And maybe that you can go to yourself identify the problem which you have created, and then you can go to think about correcting it as well. That is the role of a judgmental attitude towards nature, and that is the role that it goes on to play. Thus, you're going to find a different type of words. Now, for example, you're going to find the words like uncertain monsoon. Now, imagine how can monsoons be uncertain? Now, monsoons have been coming in the same manner. Their characteristics have remained the same for the last millions of years. But because you came here, you increase the population and you harm the monsoon, you change its behavior, you brought about certain things to change its behavior by heating or cooling the atmosphere, and then you start shouting out that monsoons are uncertain because it doesn't suit your agriculture, it doesn't suit your cultivation, it doesn't suit your urban areas. You start saying that it shouldn't have rained so much in one day in Delhi. Why? Because the roads got flooded. Now, how is it that you can go to judge the monsoon, and that goes on to show that you have a perceptual distortion? Then you're going to talk about normal monsoon as if there is something called as normal in nature. And in nature, there is nothing normal at all. There is no way that you can go to call anything as normal at all in this case. And then you're going to say flood is a hazard. Now, without floods, there was no way that the Gangetic plain would have evolved. Without drought, there was no way that so many of these creatures, particularly some of the rodent snakes, maybe scorpions, would have existed as well. Without earthquake, and imagine, without earthquake, that means it must have taken millions of earthquakes for Himalayas to have formed. So, the same phenomena which has benefited you and the same phenomena which is going to benefit you, it is up to you to see that. That is, it doesn't go to harm you, but because you have not understood nature, you have not understood environment, you are allowing yourself to be harmed and then blaming it on nature itself. That is why we say that the word uncertain and normal is actually very judgmental and insulting to the monsoons. As if monsoons are the culprit and humans have every right to make a judgment about some of the aspects of natural phenomena is wrong or right. Now, that means that is the entire of the ball is in the court of the human being, and they will go on to say that monsoons have been good or monsoons have been bad in this case. Now, that brings us to this factor. How is it that nature is to be perceived? In what way is it that we can go to perceive nature? Firstly, as we can go to talk about, that is the reality in contrast to the perceptions that people have built about nature is that nature is the best teacher. It's largely because you keep on learning from nature every day, every time on. Nature is to be seen as a learning from, as a teacher, as a mentor, and an all-powerful as an inspirer. You don't go on to get inspired by so many things as you can go on to get yourself inspired by nature. If you're feeling very low, if you're feeling very down, nothing can go to spur you up other than maybe a beautiful weather condition. That is nature. Now, nature has been and is going to be an institution. It's an institution essentially. The best institution mankind has ever seen. This is largely because we are talking about that. When we are going to be talking about institutions, everything about nature goes on to be solving your problem in one or the other way. It's the best institution that you have seen it. It's the best institution that is observed and is capable of providing a lot of insights as well as intuitive learning. Maybe that you're going to see a particular type of weather phenomena, and then you're going to get up, aha, this is going to be the world, and then you go to wake up in this case. Nature helps you provide intuition, and when it is going to be talking about intuition, then we are going to be talking about intuition helps in coping with life's unpredictability, life's uncertainty, and undiscovered aspects of it. I repeat that. If you are coming up with intuition, it helps cope with your unpredictable, because you may going to get an intuition out of something that will go on to imagine. And when we are talking about that part, that is, you'll start imagining it, that something like a solution can come up. If there is some type of an uncertainty, there will be some of these aspects that you will go on to uncover out of it as well. So there is a undiscovered aspects of it that you can go to explore as well. And that is going to be one part. One part is what we are going to be talking about, that is how nature should be perceived, that nature is going to be the best teacher one can think of. And it teaches you both logically as well as intuitively, both of them. Second is, environment is not something which can be modified. Neither it is something that can be commented upon, not something that is always follow the logic. The last thing that environment goes on to follow is going to be logic. And why we say so? We say so largely because of a lot of factors. And when we say that is because of many factors, you can understand it. That is, it cannot be modified. When we say that it cannot be modified, it means a lot of things here. And why is it that we going to say that it means a lot of things here? Because when you are modifying it, you yourself will be affected because of it. Commented upon, when you're commenting upon it, you stop learning out of it. If you start commenting, you stop learning out of it. That is going to be another part. And of course, environment is something that will not go on, never will go on to follow logic at all. And we say it will never go on to follow logic. This is largely because environment in essence is always going to be not following any type of a track. It is to be seen as something that provides insights and intuitions. Only for that purpose. That is the best role that nature can go on to play in this case. That's the best part associated with it. Consequently, we are going to be talking about that there are no problems in the environment. In that, there are no problems that require to be solved. There are no elements. This is largely because environment is something that you can learn from. There is no distortion in environment, because what you see is a problem is your own perception. So when there are no problems, there are nothing that the environment requires to be solved. There are elements that require to be corrected, and there are no patches that require to be cleaned. There are no complexities that are required to be managed. Why? Because it's nothing complex at all. For example, you're going to say that a river has a way, stay out of it. Now, if you go on to build some of these hutments in the path of the river, what will going to happen? What will happen is that you will going to get flooded. This is what exactly has happened in the Kosi plains, in the Kosi tract. What has happened that is people have built there themselves. In which place and where exactly is it that they have built it? They have built it on the river bed. And because they have built it on the river bed, every time they off and on, they're going to get flooded. So that is to be understood. And the river had to be respected. And only then some of these things could have moved. Now, it is in this light that you can go to say that you have to see volcanic activity, earthquakes, tsunamis. For example, take the case of a volcanic eruption that took place. Now, a volcanic eruption is always going to be seen with creating some type of an obstacle to aviation. Now, it is always going to be said that is emanating some toxic fumes into the environment. But then volcanic activity was taking place even millions of years back. It is out of this volcanic activity that dinosaurs were made extinct. And because they were made extinct, you are here, human beings are here. Now, at that point of a time, you didn't blame the environment, and right now you are blaming the environment as if something strange has happened. had volcanic activity not taken place, then there was no way that environment would have replenished itself. There was no way environment would have been able to clean itself. And had there been no earthquakes, there was no way that the Himalayas could have also formed also. Had there been no tsunamis, the whole of the coastal areas would have been completely unclean of sorts. So tsunamis go on to play such a big role, such a major role in the cleaning of the entire of the coastal areas. That's why we say that they're only phenomena to be understood and to be respected, not for anything else in this case. So, as we say, none has described. You'll find that no one will go on to describe a volcanic eruption as majestic or heavenly or eternal beauty. Now, volcanic activity, once you go on to take a look at it, as you are taking a look at it here, imagine it is going to be majestic, it's heavenly, it's an eternal beauty. God has given you eye to see such type of volcanic activity once in your life. A volcanic activity is one of the most awesome phenomena in nature, most astonishing as well. It is something that is actually extraordinary and godly. God has given you eyes to see this extraordinary aspect. And it is these expressions that are going to change the way people think and perceive their surrounding. When you start saying that, well, volcanic activity is going to be something that is going to be very, very tough, and it goes on to destroy people, destroy nature, then that will go on to become a hazard. If it goes on to become a hazard, all the so-called hazards like volcanoes, earthquakes, cyclones, tsunamis, floods and droughts have been beneficial to human beings. Because had these hazards not taken place, there was no way that human beings would have lived on this planet at all. The base for all the human habitation and its activity has been set by earthquakes, because they were the one who laid the foundation for it. That has been set by earthquakes, that has been set by volcanic activity, that has been set by tsunami. And all of these natural phenomena is what the so-called modern civilization, I repeat it, the so-called modern civilization calls it as hazard, as if it is really a hazard. Thus, as we say, they are not a problem. That's precisely, environmental problems are not a problem to be solved or to be managed. Environment itself, the best manager, and you leave it. You leave environment, supposing that even if it is that you have damaged it, you just leave it. Environment will be able to take care of it. And some of you people will have been able to find it as well. If you recall it, during the COVID times when there was a lockdown, what happened was that a good number of people lived indoors. The whole of the region, the entire of the region was without any car. It was completely deserted. It just took 1 month of a time for Yamuna to be getting clean. It took 1 month of a time, 1.5 months of a time to start looking at Mount Everest from places like Saharanpur in northern India and even Sitamarhi in the eastern part of the country. It was like that. Environment is itself the best manager, and it can go on to be best managed by adjusting it to it, adapting to it, not exactly by criticizing it. Now, always remember, nature is always going to be changing. Nature is always going to be changing, and nature, that is the basic nature of nature. If you're going to be talking about temperature, warming and cooling is part of it. Climate has always become warmer or it has become cooler. Climate has not changed. It's the people and their perception towards climate that has actually changed. It's largely because it doesn't suit them. It's not that because of a change in the temperature, the sea level will go on to rise. Sea level has risen before also, and not once, not twice. Umpteen times, you're going to stop counting the number of times the sea level has gone on to change. Change is the only constant in nature. There's nothing as much constant as change in nature. There are no hazards, there are only perceptions. And when we say that only perceptions and only phenomena, we only say it from a natural angle. Nature is not our facilitator. It doesn't going to facilitate us. It's our heritage that commands us. It's because of nature that we going to exist. It is not an object that we can go on to think of buying, think of judging. It is our mentor. It is our mentor because we need to learn from nature, and we are keep on learning if it is that we stop being judgmental. There are no issues, no excesses in nature. There are only marvels. Marvels, that means a tsunami is a marvel. Volcanic activity is a marvel in a similar manner. A tropical cyclone is a marvel if you experience a 240 kilometer of a wind speed. You will open your eyes in awe. That is because of the amount of wind speed and the type of range that will be taking place in that region. Anything that is going to be away from that is a perceptual distortion. It is this realistic perception that will help us, nature to command us, command respect. It is this part, it is this realistic perception that will going to help nature to command respect, that it deserves to support mankind and also to teach them, also to educate them. And of course, when it keeps on changing, you also keep on changing. Changing because that is the essence of it. Nature has always changed, and as we said, the only constant in nature is change. So it is because of this change it is beautiful. It is because of this change that it is awesome. It is this change if you start calling it as uncertain, unpredictable. It is indeed a perceptual distortion. It indeed shows that you don't have ethical values. It indeed shows that you are not educated. It indeed shows that you do not deserve to be a member of this planet.
To have more such discussions and analysis, subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon for notifications on our upcoming videos.